So, fuck's sake. Okay. So when your boy Milton was in the army, when we were going through infantry training, we had to go through close quarter combat training. Meaning you have to you're trained in how to fight people fist to fist. In the event that you can no longer use your weapon, you want to train your hands to be weapons, right? Now, we had a sergeant who I'll call Sergeant we'll call him Sergeant Peppers. Yeah, Sergeant Peppers is good. We'll call him Sergeant Peppers. So, Sergeant Peppers was apparently this real shit pump. Shit pump is a word that you're probably accustomed to if you've been in the army. He was a real shit pump, meaning he was a bad soldier, was bad at what he did, was bad at his job, but found his calling in Her Majesty's Canadian Royal Armed Forces when he started doing steroids. He started doing a ton of steroids, and Sergeant, I just said his fucking name. Call him Sergeant M. Okay, we're gonna call him Sergeant M, or else I'm gonna fucking. Sergeant M started doing steroids and got fucking huge. I mean, this guy was massive. He had a chest the size of a barrel laying sideways, and he was teaching the CQC class. And it turns out later that he was basically put into the CQC portion because he had such bad roid rage, actually, that he was non-functional anywhere else. He couldn't be part of a unit because he was such a cranky bitch. So we were taking CQC, and he would do things. He really enjoyed doing things that were actually pretty fucked up and could probably be investigated. Like if he was demonstrating a technique, like for example, he was demonstrating like pressure points and weak spots. And you know what a Charlie horse is, right? Getting hit in the quad really hard. He'd be like, all right, let me show you fucking shitbags how to give someone a Charlie horse to disable them. And you would get some 19-year-old fucking untrained private to come up to the front of the fucking demonstration in front of 80 people, and he would knee this kid as hard as he fucking could in the quad and like basically cripple them. I'd be like, there you go, now you know how to, and these kids would just be like reeling in pain. He to train us with knives, he had something that I've never seen anywhere else in my life, a taser knife. It is a knife around the edge of which is electrified, like some sort of fucking Star Wars weapon. And the point is that the feeling of the electricity when it touches you feels like being cut. It's designed to, it doesn't shock you. You don't like, you're not paralyzed. It just hurts really badly and feels like you're being cut. That's the point of this weapon. Okay, we've restarted Steam, so we'll try this again. So it sucks. And he'd do shit like he'd call someone to the front of the room if like he didn't like somebody, if he didn't like a particular fucking soldier, he would call them. Did the whole server reset? Oh. Okay. He would call someone to the front of the class who he didn't like, and he would drag the knife down their back, and they would scream, and it was awful. It was awful to watch. It was awful to have happen to you. He would do fucked up shit like that. So towards the end of our CQC training, the last day of our CQC training, he we had to have these 3-minute pugilistic bouts, meaning, I mean, usually pugilistics are actual, you know, the things where you see soldiers wearing the helmets and they got the long stick with the fucking foamy bits on the end of the beat the shit out of each other. They decided to forego that, and it was just like grappling matches. It was just 3-minute grappling matches with somebody else. And every now and then, one of the instructors would step in and be like, fight me. And, you know, it'd be this demonstration of how good you can be when you're trained in CQC, as you would watch these instructors kick the shit out of whoever was in the ring. So there was another instructor who was also an asshole who we will call Sergeant A. And Sergeant A was sitting there like, oh, come on, who wants to fucking fight me, huh? Come on, who wants to fucking fight me? So I was like, okay, sure, I will. So I went in and sat down in the ring, and Sergeant A was like, okay, yeah. And then Sergeant M, Mr. Shit Pump Steroid fucking jockey, of course, steps in and says, no, I'll fight Private Milton. Or more appropriately, that's okay, Sergeant A, I'll kick the shit out of this little pussy. But you see, Sergeant M didn't realize something. And that is that your boy MiltonTPike1 has been training in jiu-jitsu hard since I was 15. I was going 4 times a week since I was 15 to jiu-jitsu. And by the time this encounter happened, I was like 3/4 of the way to my black belt. I was a brown belt plus like 3/4. The way that it works in the North American Self-Defense Academy, specifically through Japanese jiu-jitsu, is you have to do 4 components. You have to do the kimi no kata, you have to do a terminology lesson, you have to do a self-defense circle is what it's called, and you have to do the imposed movements. And I had done everything except for the imposed movements. So I was closing in on my black belt. Anyways, the point was, I had, at this point, 10 years of jiu-jitsu, and this guy had no idea. So I sit down, and the ref counts it down and goes 3, 2, 1, go. And and he knew how to do one thing. He knew how to do one thing. He knew how to do a gi choke is what it's called. So basically he knew how to like grab your shirt collar and twist it around and choke you like that. That's it. He had a total, hey Ghost Man, thank you for the host, buddy. He knew how to do this one thing. And the one thing that he knew how to do was to try to do a gi choke. That's it. That was the extent of his technical prowess. So it took me 30 seconds to diagnose that. And anyways, so the first thing I did was jumped on his back and started working on securing a rear naked choke. And for anyone who doesn't know, so if someone's trying to choke you, a lot of what people do is press their chin in, right? So all I do is take my knuckles, I'm not punching them, and you just start digging your knuckles in there. And it's really uncomfortable. It feels bad, man. It feels bad. So the natural response to having people dig their knuckles in there is they pop their head up, and then you're able to sink in the rear naked choke. So I did that, and I got him into a rear naked choke, and right away he like tapped on my face. He like tapped out like that, and the ref was like, "That's it, the match is over." And I stood up, and these like 80 soldiers who were all around us and didn't really understand what they had watched were like, the fuck was that? What happened? And the ref said, we had a submission. And there, because this whole thing had happened so fast, they were like, who submitted who? And the ref said, Sergeant, fuck, I almost said his name, Sergeant M tapped out. And they were like, okay. And then Sergeant M stands up and goes, I want a fucking rematch! We're doing a rematch right now! You're a fucking piece of shit! We're having a fucking rematch right now! They've never happened before. No instructor had ever demanded a rematch as soon as the match was over. And he right away was like, we're having a fucking rematch right now! And they were like, So like, and the refs, you could tell that the other instructors were like, this is kind of uncomfortable. This is pretty unorthodox. This sort of thing usually doesn't happen. But they were like, okay, rematch. So everybody else, you could tell everybody else in the room, Sergeant rematch, exactly. You could tell the other soldiers in the room genuinely were kind of uncomfortable because it was very obvious that Sergeant M was very fucking mad. Like he wasn't just like frustrated and competitive. He was actually fucking furious that he lost this 3-minute bout. It was meaningless. So it was kind of uncomfortable for everyone. So everyone else, I found out afterwards that everyone else was like, oh shit, like, oh God, like this is getting scary. What was going through my mind? I thought, oh bitch, you didn't get enough of a taste the first time? All right, come get your fucking medicine. Come get your fucking medicine. I'm gonna spoon feed it to you. You want your fucking medicine? Come get your medicine, motherfucker. So we had another match, and of course he started out by. And what happened was, once again, I got his back and I got back control. I got my hooks in, so I sunk my feet like between his legs so he couldn't try to buck me off. And I was working on trying to get his head to pop up again. And of course, he had adapted a little bit, so he grabbed my hands, so I couldn't do it. So what did I do? I used Kiki's secret weapon, the fucking iron chin. All I had to do was dig my chin into the side of his face right there in the same spot, and boop, up popped his head again. And before I could even get in the choke this time, he just tapped out. He just fucking tapped out again. And they were like, oh, that's it? Like, that's it, the match is over. Sergeant M tapped out again. And anyways, and we stood up. My favorite part was that we stood up after this match, and he looked me right in the face, and he said, you fucking piece of shit. I still remember his exact words. This is a professional Canadian soldier and an instructor, and this is how he handled the situation. He stands up and he goes, you fucking piece of shit, by rights, I ought to break your fucking nose right now. And I remember thinking, what does that even mean? What do you mean, by rights, you ought to break my nose? Like, are you on fucking drugs? Do you think that by rights, you should be able to break my nose because you lost a fight twice? What do you mean, by rights, you want to break my nose? I just thought, what a stupid fucking thing to say. It was so weird. Anyways, and so what he said, you guys will like this. I wish the story had a really victorious, triumphant ending. Not really. He said, he was like, hey, you fucking pussy piece of shit using fucking pressure points. What kind of bullshit is that? Fucking, you ever heard of a fucking fair fight? And I just wanted to say, yeah, fair fight, like 6 years of Tren and Anavar and fucking testosterone, propionate and Deca and all that other shit you're pumping into your veins. Yeah, Sergeant M, you're the indication of what happens if you Tren hard and never give up on yourself. Anyways, but he was like, oh, you fucking never heard of a fucking fair fight before in your life, you fucking pussy. And then he said, don't worry, you'll get yours later. So sure enough, wouldn't you know, the next day, he wanted to demonstrate the fucking Charlie horse technique on two different legs. Wouldn't you know who he chose for both legs? Hey, Toots. Mwah. You're so pretty. You look amazing. You look like a goddess. Look at her. She's so pretty. You have nice hair. You're just my favorite. She's so pretty. Look at her.
Hey, everyone.
I'm telling them the story of Sergeant M, the guy who...
I hate this story. Is it the ankle shearer?
It is. Oh, I forgot to tell them that part. Yeah. So he Charlie horsed me as hard as he could on either leg in front of 80 other soldiers. Because it wasn't a fight, right? He wasn't like, ooh, if I win, I'm gonna Charlie horse you. He just said, hey, Private Milton, I am your superior. You have to come and stand here, and I'm now going to Charlie horse you. It was like some, what a big man. Yes, Monka Steve, well said. Aaron just reminded me about a very important part of the story that I found out when Aaron and I first started dating. Sergeant M has been relocated. He is no longer with the CQC section. because you guys want to know something super fucking depressing. You guys want to know something super fucking depressing? So I can't attribute. I think the guy is just a rage-filled fucking psychopath. But I guess what happened was in the following year after we were there, he was teaching a course around the same time of year, and there was a kid in the course who he felt wasn't trying hard enough, and he was really mad at this kid for not trying hard enough. Like, it was one of those. He was like the Gomer Piles of this course. Gomer Pyle, is it Pile or Piles? Whatever it is. Anyways, he was like the Gomer of this course, and so he wanted to make an example out of him. He wanted to make an example out of this soldier. So he took it was just Pile singular. Okay, Gomer Pyle. He wanted to make an example out of the Gomer Pyle of this course, who, you know, the way that we describe them in the way that we describe them in the Canadian infantry is works hard, tries hard, bottom third. That's this kid. Worked hard, tried hard, wasn't very good. So Sergeant M calls him up to the front of the class and figures that the best way to get him to start trying harder was to demonstrate the leg sweep on this 19-year-old kid. And according to, apparently in Sergeant M's fucking mind, demonstrating the leg sweep meant that he had this kid up in front of 80 other soldiers learning CQC and kicked him as hard as he possibly could in the ankle and hit this kid's fucking leg like a piece of dry spaghetti. The kid was wearing a combat boot, and even through the combat boot, it snapped like a twig. Literally, they said that like you could hear the crunch. It sounded like someone ripping off Velcro was the sound of this kid's leg shattering inside of his combat boot. So the kid falls over, understandably, and starts screaming bloody fucking murder. And Sergeant M calls him a pussy and tells him to stand up. So the kid stands up on his powder foot and damages it worse. And anyways, the last that I heard, I don't actually know how the story ends, aside from the fact that Sergeant M was quietly shoved somewhere other than CQC, and this kid had to go to a hospital and get like dozens and dozens and dozens of metal plates and pins and screws and nails to try to put his foot back together. And the last thing that I heard, which was a few months ago, was that his body was rejecting it. His body was rejecting the nails and pins and shit like that, and they were pretty sure they were gonna have to amputate. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine being such a fucking child that you can't handle losing, and you can't handle anybody questioning your authority or not having this complete unquestioning authority, respect for you, so you kick a child in the fucking, I mean, I guess child is a bit bold for a 19-year-old. Technically he's an adult, but he's a kid, you know, a teenager. You kick a teenager so hard in the fucking leg that he's gonna have to have his foot amputated. Do you think maybe that's some time to do some self-reflection? So anyways, that's a very long story to say that that is what my friend was saying when he sent me the picture of the definition of jujitsu, and it said involuntary yoga, and he said it reminds me of what you did to Sergeant M. That's what he was referring to. The time that Sergeant M tried twice to kick my ass, and instead he got folded like a lawn chair. But yeah, so anyways, did he get sued? Nope. That's the army for you. They're very good at shuffling these people around. So not fucked. I can't imagine kicking some kid so hard that they're gonna need to have their fucking foot amputated.